And most churches don't struggle because they lack vision. They struggle because they're chasing the wrong definition of growth. Today, we want to talk about church growth. We want to help at Tithely here. We want to help churches build a clear, connected pathway from discovery to discipleship. However, people find you online, to really making true followers of Jesus. We want to build tools that help simplify that process for you. Today, we have a guest who brings extensive ministry experience serving in churches of all sizes, from the biggest one in the United States currently to the smallest ones you've probably ever heard of. And Life Church was at the biggest church, in case you didn't know that. And during his time there, he pastored the broadcast location, served as a teaching pastor, and played a significant role in hiring and the selection of countless staff members across the organization. So today we want to welcome Chris Spradlin. How goes it, man?
Hello, hello. How you doing, man?
Good. Thanks for being here today. Excited to have two Chris's in the same room to talk about church growth. And
Dude, also, hey. Also, we have this in common, and we have this in common.
both bald and beard. When if you've
Yeah,
been around the webinar for a while, you would have seen mine be giant. Like I think Chris and I share that gift of the crop rotation, right?
yeah. I always tell people you got to grow it somewhere.
That's right. Well, Chris, your journey has brought you through church world, through frozen yogurt, who even knew, and now to executive staffing and coaching by way of snowboarding and trout fishing. So I want to know, what started you down the path to ministry?
Yeah. Good question. So, long line of like pastors, grandpas, all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And I had a grandma that would always say, "You going into ministry?" She'd speak it in over me all the time, and I just sort of always knew. Uh, so my first, this shows you how old I am. So my first ministry job, Willow Creek Community Church, had a newsletter they would mail in the actual mail to
Oh,
everybody,
wow.
all the jobs in the country. And I found a couple of those and literally 300 resume. I sent out 300 resumes and I got 299 no's and I got one yes. And it was a church in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And
Okay.
so I was the youth pastor there for about 7 years. And this story is really important. And then I'll speed this up quickly. So I'd been there 7 years and I knew that God was about to pivot me out of there.
Hmm.
So I went and did the same play. I went and printed a bunch of resumes and I put them in the mail. I go to the post office, about to put them in the mail. And it wasn't an audible voice, but it was very clear. God said, no, I want you to throw those away. And I want you to sit and watch what I'm about to do.
Hmm.
So we fought with God. I lost. He won. I chunked him and I just sat, man. And I was disillusioned. I didn't feel like my gifts were being used, all the things, right? And about 4 months after that, the lead pastor called me at midnight on a Saturday night and said, "Hey, I'm sick. I want you to preach tomorrow." And I said, "I got you." That was the weekend that Craig Rochelle stumbled into our church on vacation.
Wow. In Steamboat Springs.
In Steamboat Springs, man. I didn't know who he was. Matter of fact, he walked in with 5 kids and he was pregnant. His wife was pregnant. So I figured they came over from Utah.
Yeah.
And Life Church was about 2,000 people at that time. And he introduced himself to me. And the next day he calls me at the office. He said, "Listen, I've never done this. I'm hiding from Amy. She told me to leave you alone." He said, "I have a question. Do you sense that God is about to transition you?"
Wow.
And I said, "Man, let me tell you a story." And 3 months later, joined him at Life Church. And Chris, I was with him from 2000 in attendance to 60,000 in attendance.
Oh, wow.
And that happened in a 5-year period.
That's what I would call explosive growth.
It was crazy. We were broke. Nobody knew what they were doing, even Craig. We were exhausted. But man, God blessed it. Then outside of that, God did the unthinkable. He took me out of Life Church, out of ministry, and me and another guy were actually running a company called Orange Leaf Frozen Yogurt. It was one of those overpriced weigh and pay yogurts.
Yeah.
You put Oreos in there, put on the scale, it costs $60. But this was unbelievable. God has used this, but we started with that organization at about 15 locations, and in 4 years, we're able to grow it to 450 over a 4-year period. So God was weaving this growth theme in my life. He was putting me in close proximity to things that grew big, grew fast. We ended up exiting out of that and then started a corporate staffing firm where we did C-suites and commercial construction and architecture space. And Groeschel called me one day and said, "Hey, man, I got a question for you. Do you staff churches?" And I said, "No, I don't." And he said, "Now you do." And I'm like, "Okay, how can I help?" He had 2 or 3 buddies that he wanted me to go help.
Yeah.
And so over the past 6 or 7 years, Chris, we built a strong staffing organization called 139.
Okay.
We have a growth organization where we help churches grow big in a short period of time.
Yeah.
And that's where we spend all of our time today, man.
So, man, you've been a part of the explosive church growth. You've been a part of the yogurt growth industry and then corporate, and now back on the staffing side of church. What are some of the most common ways churches think they should grow but shouldn't?
So listen, there's so much to say here. So there are so many lids that stop a church from growing. Pastors have passion, they have calling. Unfortunately, so many pastors have lost that fire.
Yeah.
So many have lost that passion because it's not what they thought it was going to be. They didn't grow like they thought they were going to grow. And what you see is sometimes in some situations, the lack of growth, the politics, the elder board, all those things just kind of squashes that in you. And you lose what I call kind of that John the Baptist Wild Wild West fire, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one lid. We have some leaders, some pastors that have lost that. And what we do is we partner with them to pull that out of them, to extract that out of them, remind them what it was God called them to. But here's the thing. There's several other lids that will stop your church from growing. Parking, believe it or not, it will stop your church from growing.
Yeah.
If your lobby's really, really bad, it will stop your church from growing.
What do you mean by that? Unpack that for me. If your lobby's
just in like if you're like we have a church in Florida, man. We worked with them for so long, and we were able to get to the certain threshold, and the lobby just did not foster enough space to make friends. Here's the thing.
That's good.
People aren't as concerned anymore with coming to a friendly church. They want to make a friend at church.
Interesting.
And if you don't have connection environments where people can make a friend at church, and you make it complicated to find a place to park, and then the other lid is kid space.
Yeah.
If you walk in to check your kid in, and you've got first graders with a fifth grader that's got a mustache, it just so lobby, parking, kid space, and then of course your auditorium. But here's the other thing, man. Staffing. So many churches staff according to what they've seen. They staff according to what they learned at that big church conference. And And most of that stuff, and listen, man, we work with most of those large churches that do conferences,
Mhm.
but the reality is that doesn't translate to the pastor that has 200 in attendance, 400, 800, and they're trying to figure out how to scale up. And most people we work with, their staffing model has created a lid, and they're just not aware of it because they learned it from some of the greatest folks out there, but it just doesn't translate.
Yeah. So some of the lids, I like what you talked about connection. And it reminds me, we've been in a season of going to other churches just because, I worked at the same church for 16 and a half years and I want to see what other people are doing. So we went to a church the other day, we asked them if they had a kid space, and I've got kids from 18 down to 11. My
Okay.
11-year-old wanted to go to a children's church type experience, and they said yes, they did. Well, we took them, dropped them off. We assumed that it would be like what we're used to, and when he came back out, he told us a different story. He was the fifth grader with the mustache with all the little kids, right? He was like, Dad, I don't want to go back to that church. Well, so what you mentioned, the expectations from conferences, expectations from other churches that have done it a certain way. But let's talk about staffing ratios. So it doesn't sound like there's a magic number of every church should have 1 to X number of people, or is there?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. So listen, there's a couple of numbers that are super important here. Okay.
Okay.
So I want to tell a story first.
All right.
I want you to think for just a second, staffing ratios of one full-time equivalent staff per 150 attenders,
Okay.
one full-time equivalent staff per 125 attenders, one full-time staff equivalent per 100 attenders. Okay. That's where a lot of churches fall.
Okay.
Now, here's what I want to share. I want you to imagine that we're in the ER for just a minute.
All right.
And you walk in and they have all these gurneys that are in the hallway trying to get a room. Okay. And you have one gurney that's got somebody on it. And brother, there is blood everywhere. It is on the gurney. It's dripping down. It's on the floor.
I'm about to pass out.
I know. But go with me. So here's the thing. If your staffing ratios right now are one full-time equivalent per 150 people, that's your gurney.
Right.
There's blood on the floor.
Yeah, you got to get that guy taken care of.
Everybody
else can wait.
You're exactly right. So what that means is that if you have one full-time equivalent per 150 people, that there's blood everywhere and you're not pastoring people well.
Wow.
Because you don't have enough people.
Yeah.
Pastor them well, and the body bleeds. The church body bleeds when it's not pastored well. Okay. So now let's talk about 1 to 125. There's another gurney, no blood. Okay. That guy's sitting there, feels like he's fine, doing good, but he has internal bleeding. Okay. What does that mean? That means that internal bleeding is going to show up somewhere at some point.
Yeah.
You're not going to get away from it. But on the outside, everything looks pretty good.
Okay.
Okay. If your staff ratios are one full-time equivalent per 125 attenders, what that means, Chris, is you got an internal bleed somewhere. Okay? We're pastoring them better than 1 to 150. But now we have some things on the outside, things look good. But if you're 1 to 125, there's still some internal bleeding that's happening somewhere. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Then you have a guy that's sitting on the gurney. He's getting rolled to the checkout desk. He's about to get taken home. Okay. What that is, that's 1 to 100. Okay. So listen, optimal, best case scenario. If you're staffing, it's going to be one full-time staff equivalent per 100 attenders. But here's the reality. Most churches can't do that.
Yeah.
And you sure can't go, if you're 1 to 175, you can't go from 175 to 100 because you don't have the capital to write that check. So how do you go if you're at 1 to 175? How do you go from 1 to 175 to 150 and then over time go from 1 to 150 to 125? And here's what I call it. I call it a lot of duct tape, paper clip, and yarn. Okay.
You got to start out there kind of knowing where you're at, but then you can't jump to the magic number, right?
Exactly right. It's
But
not wise.
on the other side, if you start earlier thinking that way, you can build toward that so that you'll always have time to care for your people.
You can. Here's the other ratio, Chris, to remember
Yeah.
is that there's two ratios. It's the one full-time equivalent per attender. The other one is less than 45% of your entire budget.
And okay, I want to hear about both of those. So you're saying one full-time staff equivalent. Are you saying this could be a volunteer? This could be just a well-connected group leader? Unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, great question. It all depends on the size of the church, right?
Okay.
So, and the giving.
Oh,
Depends on where you're at with giving. So if your giving is strong-ish and you have some capital in the bank and your attendance makes sense, then I'm going to hire a full-time person.
Okay.
If you're struggling a little bit and you don't know if you can do that, then maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to hire two quarter-time people.
Okay.
That way we're trying to get there. Okay.
Right.
There'll be some churches that will do this. And listen, this is super important, man. You have people, pastors have people that are attending their church right now that are already extremely successful.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've done is we've voted for them. We've decided that because they're successful, that they're too busy and they probably would not fit one of these roles. So great story here. YouVersion, the Bible app.
Okay.
No, Bobby is the creator of that. Okay. Absolute genius. Craig was looking at a newspaper on a Sunday morning. I'm going somewhere. It shows how long ago this was. It said 23-year-old kid millionaire retires after selling his third tech company. He goes, that's a guy playing keyboard. Found out his name was Bobby Grunwald. He invited Bobby to come into the office and said, listen, Bobby, I saw you retired. You don't need the money. I'm looking for a staff person. I can't afford you. But here's my big ask, ASK. Here's my big ask. I want you to begin to work here full-time without a salary. And Bobby did it.
Wow. That sounds crazy.
The vision was so compelling. Now, listen, that doesn't happen for everyone, but you have people in your church that are busy, that are successful. Sometimes you need to come to them and say, listen, I have a 6-month project for you. I need you to come in. I can't pay you. And I need you to give me 5 to 8 hours a week because God's going to use this to transform the kingdom, change people's lives. And then you ask them, here's what I want you to do. And if the vision is compelling enough, they will follow you. So, Chris, when you can't write a check for staff, sometimes you got to just have guts and grit and be bold and ask people to serve when they can't. So there's all kinds of ways that you climb towards the appropriate staffing ratio.
Well, and I mean, the Bible tells us that, right? We don't have because we don't ask, or we ask with the wrong motives. And it sounds like in that situation, the heart was in the right place and it felt like a ridiculous thing that only God could do. What do you get for saying no to somebody, right? Or for saying no for somebody? Craig could have easily said no for that. And then we don't have YouVersion. We don't have, that amazing impact of all the translation of the Bibles around the world. That's good. That's good encouragement. So with that in mind, if there's a magic ratio, if there's an ideal ratio, I don't want to call it magic because we don't believe in magic, do we? It's all just slide in numbers.
No, we're good.
But how do you actually know it's time to hire? Let's say we're a really small church. We've got incremental growth. You mentioned look at your giving. Is it strong? Look at the ratios. Is it strong? But how do you actually know when it's time to pull that trigger?
Yeah, here's something that's really interesting, man. So a lot of churches, as they're trying to grow, what they do is they hire people that work with tools,
Mm.
and they don't hire people that work with people. Okay?
Okay.
Now
Yeah.
go with me for a second.
Okay. I want to hear this.
People that work with tools, okay? People that do lights. They hire people that do sound. They think that when they get 400, we have to have a full-time worship person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You have people that work with planning center, and some people pay their bass player. Some people pay this player. They pay this player. But here's the thing. Here's the way I talk about this. We spend so much money on the sexy, making things look good. We have the right tools. We have all these things, but so many churches, they allocate money for that first, but they don't allocate money for people that work with people.
Mm.
Okay. I say the most underrated hire in the entire country is a connections pastor. I didn't say a first impressions pastor. I said a connections pastor. Why? I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. People aren't as concerned with coming to a friendly church. People aren't as concerned with coming to a cool church. People want to make a friend at church.
At church.
When you have the right connections pastor, they wake up every single day, and all they're thinking about is how do we connect? How do we connect? And there's connection systems that we coach on, because some people are like, what in the world do they do? But a connections pastor is critical. So your question was, how do they know when the right time's to hire? One of the first things is go and look at your allocation. How much of your money is going towards sexy, meaning cool?
Yeah.
How much of your money is going towards tools, and how much is going towards people that work with people? Because that's what makes the house grow.
Mm. That's good right there. So we actually talked about this in the last couple of episodes that we did, and that is a theme, is that connecting people to people is really the most important part of getting the gospel to grow. It's not about building bigger buildings or fancier lights and bands and everything else. It is about making opportunities for people to connect. So when talking about hiring people, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to hire the perfect person, but they really rarely exist. But you guys have taken time to make a guide that we're going to be giving away to all of you that signed up for this and those who are watching today live. But you mentioned some ways to identify different people that is pretty unique. And I want to hear you talk about them a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Our team, man, we're actually really proud of this. Okay. We got some creatives together and started dreaming. And what we tried to determine is what are the different levels of competency?
Okay.
What is the different levels of genius? What are the different levels of being able to execute or not within a church staff? Okay. And here's what we came up with. All right.
All right.
Green but good. Some have staff members that are green, but they're good. Another one is battle tested. Some of us have staff members that are battle tested. Then we have what we call the rock star. That's what everybody wants. And then we have what is called the unicorn. Okay. Now, let me unpack these for just a second.
Yeah.
Green but good. For example, I was just in a staff meeting, and we just placed a 22-year-old youth pastor at a pretty decent sized church. Okay. And most decent sized churches aren't hiring green but good. They want battle tested.
Okay.
But this green but good had experiences in his life that pointed towards, man, this guy could be really good one day. For example, being the captain of a state football team.
Okay.
Okay. At a young age, he led. He learned how to lead. Okay. Interning at a larger church where they actually had significant responsibility in the youth department, but for 2 to 3 years they had watched how to build and grow a youth ministry. So that's what you call good to green.
Good
All
but
right.
green. So they've got some experience, they got some exposure about where you want them to go, but they're not battle tested.
They're not. They hadn't been beat up yet, bro. Then they're not bleeding yet.
They
They
had ministry beat up. Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. They haven't been hurt. So then the next level is battle tested. So green but good is a certain price point.
Okay.
Battle tested is a step up. It's a higher price point. And so what is battle tested? It's someone that has 3 to 5 years of experience. They got a couple scars from stitches. They've been punched in the gut, but they've seen some success.
Yeah.
They've seen some growth. They've seen change lives. They've seen the ministry impact a high school. Okay. Not a lot, but they've seen some of it. That's battle tested.
Okay. And then
Okay.
you mentioned like a linear tier. So we're going from good to green. Like these are your entry level. When we put it in the perspective of salary ranges, they're going to be lower and then battle tested. And then we go up to rock star.
Yeah.
All right. Tell us about the rock star. These are the people that everybody wants to hire.
These are the people that everybody wants to hire. Man, they've been beat up, they've got bruises, they've got scars, and they've learned that that's a part of the pain of ministry.
Mm.
They understand how to deal with that. They're not set back by that. They understand how to create some strategy. They have experience in it. Now, here's what it may, if you're looking for an executive pastor, it doesn't mean that rock star necessarily has been an executive pastor for 7-8 years, but they've been in other jobs that are high strategy, high vision, maybe a larger church, and they have what it takes to be able to excel at that next level. And that's the next tier of price point.
Okay. So they're going to cost us a little more money. They're going to have more experience. They're going to have been tried and true. As we're talking through these, by the way, if you have a question, hit the Q&A button and you can submit it and we'll get those to Chris toward the end of our time here together. But before we move to the next one, anything else to say about the rock star before the rock star becomes a unicorn?
A unicorn. I think we're ready for the unicorn. Okay. Everybody wants the unicorn. So when our staffing organization works with people, we'll do an on-site visit.
Okay.
And man, they'll begin to draw out what they want. Man, we need them to have a PhD from Harvard. They need to have preached to this many people. They need to know 7 languages. That's ridiculous, right? But in the church world, they want all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to tell you right now that the unicorn is the needle, not in a haystack, not in 2 haystacks, not in 3, but a needle in 4 and 5 haystacks. Okay?
Wow.
They've been there. They've done that. They've led at a high level. And a lot of those individuals have been where they're at for quite some time.
Okay. So a unicorn, would you say a unicorn maybe, how do they get to be a unicorn? Is it just, are unicorns only older people with lots of life experience that have been through ministry and now they're ready to retire?
Great question. No. I think you're going to be hard pressed to find a unicorn with life experience under about 34, 35. Okay. Because part of it is experience.
Yeah.
Part of it is life experience. It's emotional intelligence. It's social intelligence. It's the unicorn understands this, that sometimes they need a mic in the right hand and a toilet brush in the left hand.
Yeah.
Usually good but green. All they want is the mic and not the toilet brush.
Yeah, that's a good one.
The unicorn has learned that, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's old like me and ready to retire. I think there's some unicorns. We have some clients that are unicorns at 30, 32, 33, 34, 35. Yeah.
So when you're looking, go ahead.
Yeah. Let me say this real quick.
Sure.
Chris, here's where the problem shows up.
Yeah.
Is you want a unicorn at a green but good price.
Okay. That sounds like most church budgets today,
It does. It
right?
does. So you really have to be realistic about what you're wanting and the price point that you can pay. Listen, God does miracles, right?
Sure.
We have situations where that happens, where people come down from what they're making, they're a rock star, and they go, take a lower price shot. Here's where I'm going with this. I want you to track with me, okay? Hiring a good to green employee will cost you more money than the battle tested or rock star if you don't have a development culture.
Interesting.
Okay. So you can hire that good but green, but if you don't have a development culture where you're doing book studies, where you're creating culture with your team, where they're going through speaking exercises, where they're being challenged, they're being pushed. What happens is you hire good but green and you see all this upside, but you can't develop them because you don't have that culture. Then what's going to happen is you're going to wake up in 6 to 9 months. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to be saying, you said they were good but green, but you weren't able to develop them. So sometimes you're going to pay less money at the end of it all if you spend more money and hire somebody that's battle tested, because you don't have to develop them as much. And this is where we see a lot of churches go wrong, is they'll hire somebody at a lower price point, but it costs them more because they just don't have a development culture. And listen, most churches, honestly, they don't have the budget for a development culture, right?
Sure.
So that can get problematic pretty quick.
But so I have a number of questions that are coming to mind. One is, sometimes we set unrealistic expectations for the people that we hire, or how many jobs do you see that are written for a unicorn, but you're never going to get that person because they don't exist. You really have to find them in the wild. So then you hire a good but green, and you expect them to be any level above a rock star or even battle tested, and then it leads to failure. It leads to, like what you said, they can't meet the expectations because they really haven't been in that space anyway. The culture is interesting. So if a church, where would a church start to develop a culture of? It really sounds like discipleship to me. I mean, we could call it a lot of things.
Yeah.
But growing leaders, leadership. If I'm a small church of 200, and I know at some point I want to grow and hire, what are some practical things I could prioritize that would help me set people up for success?
So listen, man, that's a really good question. And this goes back to what we were talking about a little bit ago, is do you have someone in your church that is already successful? Okay. And a lot of individuals that are successful have been developed, and they're also self-developers. Okay. And if you're a church of, 150 to 300, and you've got a big vision, you're trying to get somewhere, but you have nothing to develop your team members, that's when I'm going to grab that person.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this, listen, we have, and in a church of 2 to 300, Chris, you're not just developing your staff and your part-time staff. You want to extend it to your volunteer team leads.
Right. You want to be making disciples throughout the organization.
You're exactly right.
Throughout
Okay.
the church. Yeah.
So then there's 2 to 3 different types of development that you want to have. Number one is spiritual development. Okay. Number one, critical. Okay. Along with spiritual development, you want to have leadership development.
Hmm.
Okay. So when I'm doing spiritual development, I am assisting them with like if we're trying to develop our staff in a certain spiritual discipline, then what we're going to do for the next quarter is we're going to develop some kind of process and system for the next 3 months that we're working on the disciplines.
Yeah.
Okay. So it has to be systematized.
Okay.
So you have spiritual development and you have leadership development. Okay. There are 2 to 3 different types of leadership development books. Anything John Maxwell's great. There's corporate books that are fantastic. But what I'm asking is that person that's already successful to come in and say, hey, listen, I want you to serve here. We're growing our level of leadership spiritually and in leadership. And I would like for you to put together 4 quarters on how we can develop our full-time staff, part-time staff, and our team leads. And a lot of times what they're going to do is they're going to jump at it.
Yeah.
They're going to say, man, now I can do that. Don't put me at a front door, but let me to develop leaders.
That's good. So thinking about leadership and thinking about the good to green, battle tested rock star, what challenges happen if you put somebody at a higher level, or somebody at a lower level in charge of a higher level? Like say I hire a good to green to lead a rock star, or a battle tested to lead a unicorn. Talk to me about some of that tension.
This is where good but green get their scars. Okay.
This is where they earn their scars.
This is where they earn their scars. Okay. This really is painful for everyone involved if you don't have a right size hire.
Okay.
Okay. So if we pay that good but green and we put them in a battle tested role, sometimes it's like throwing them in the end of a swimming pool and seeing if they're going to swim.
Without teaching them how to swim.
You're exactly right. Sometimes they're going to drown.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're going to swim. Okay. Let me tell you about my very first day at work at Life Church.
Okay.
In my opinion, they're one of the top 5 probably best led churches globally. Okay. Lots of things that they're really bad at, but they're great at that. Okay. And so the best led church, one of the best led churches globally, my first day at work was this. Hey, Chris, we know Craig hired you, but we don't know exactly what we hired you for. And we don't really have an office for you. And we don't have a job description. So I guess go try to find an office and try to find something to do. Hey, no joke, man. That was day number 1. Okay. But listen, I'm a pioneer. I got a little John the Baptist in me. I got a little bit of grit and gasoline, and I went and made a way.
Right.
Okay. I'm unique like that.
Sure.
Like I always tell people, I'm probably not the smartest guy out there, but if you hit me in the head with a bat, I'm going to get up and I'm going to say, is that all you got?
Yeah.
Okay. Some people really do need to be trained.
Sure.
Before they dive into that. And if you put them in the battle tested role and you've not given them enough to succeed, they're going to disappoint you and they're going to be disillusioned in ministry potentially. Now, let me say this. Sometimes you need to scale them up, Chris. So if you want them to be a battle tested youth pastor, but you're bringing them in at good but green, sometimes you don't need to give them the whole youth ministry.
Yeah. You need to set up them training wheels for them until they're ready for them to come off.
Yeah, you're exactly right, man. Let them see some wins. There's a lot of people that will develop into that pioneer.
Yeah.
But you really got to help them succeed in that first 90 to 180 days.
Yeah. That's good. Man, these are exciting. Again, if you have any questions for Chris, we're getting near time, but just post those in the Q&A and we'll get those form-wise here. So thinking about, we got leadership structure, we got people coming up through the org. We all want to grow. Not all growth is healthy. How should the structure change any as you grow? Or maybe backing up even, what does a healthy organizational structure look like? Does it always have to be, rock star, battle tested, good but green? You talked about some challenges there.
Yeah.
What does that look like in your world?
So, Chris, out of all things church, this is probably my favorite thing to talk about.
All right.
Because here's what happens is churches will put their leadership structure into place and they'll unknowingly have a fixed mentality of that structure is going to last till Jesus comes back.
Yeah, like we did it, we decided, we spent time on it. Okay, that's it.
We're there.
Yeah.
We're there. So a story that I love to tell on this is when I was at Orange Leaf Frozen Yogurt. We went from 15 to 450 locations. And I remember there was 1 month we had 60 locations under construction all across the country.
Wow.
That was our growth path. All right. We were breaking our organizational structure every 90 days. If not, we would let out and we would stop growing.
Yeah.
Okay. It's no different with churches. A church that is 0 to 300 should have a certain organizational structure. A church from 300 to 500 should have a different. A church from 500 to 800 should have a different. And a church with 1,000 to probably about 2,000 should have a different. But the challenge is that we do, again, what we've been taught or what we have close proximity to, and we start to grow, but we don't break our organizational structure, then it becomes a lid for us. So the organizational structure as a church is growing is something that should shift often depending upon the rate at which you grow. And if you're not growing, that needs to be one of the first things that you look at is, wow, is my organizational structure actually the mechanism in place that's stopping me from growing? Interesting.
So even I grew up in the Baptist church, so I'm very familiar with the lead pastor, associate pastor, secretary, worship staff, and then there's always like a board out here that really is telling people what to do, and then the church votes. But even in other church structures, you should always have that almost not in flux, not like it's liquid, but if you hit a point where your church stops growing, you should consider, is our organizational structure serving growth, or is it serving exactly where we're at right now, so we're never going to get above it?
Yeah.
How do you identify, like, even those, when you mentioned some pain points, right? So growth is a lid, maybe giving is a lid, maybe serving capacity is a lid. What are some ways that churches can identify when the organizational structure is the lid?
Yeah. So I'm going to come back to something I said earlier. Whenever you have more people that are working with tools and you don't have people that are working with people, you've hired inappropriately. Okay. So you have people in the wrong seats. Okay. And so that's one sign. Okay. Another sign is there's a model that we really don't adhere to anymore in our coaching, which is an executive pastor model. Okay. Now, believe it or not, what happens is the executive pastor becomes the bottleneck.
Okay.
And things move slow. So there's a lot of churches. Now, listen, if you have a one executive pastor model, you can get to about 500 to 700 with that. But about 700 to 800, what we're doing is in our coaching side of what we do, we're working with churches to break that executive pastor model and have a multiple executive pastor model.
Mm.
Okay. Now, here's the thing, though. Everybody can't afford to hire 3 executive pastors.
Right.
Don't call them an executive pastor, call them a director.
Sure.
Because a church of 800 to 1,000 doesn't need 2 or 3 executive pastors. You need 2 or 3 directors or 2 or 3 pastors. So
Sure.
there's ways that you can get them just by changing a flux and title.
That's good. Well, and I know you mentioned that. Some of that we'll dive into the next time we talk next Monday into staffing models and like cost structure, which I think is awesome. So if you want to hear more about that, join us next Monday. We got a couple questions coming in as we wrap our time up. This one I think is appropriate with what we were just talking about. If you can only make one hire as a small church, what role should it be and why?
Come on, come on, come on. That is the question. Okay. Let me tell you what the roles are not. Okay. It's not a worship pastor and it's not a youth pastor.
It's not.
It's not. So many churches think that, oh man, we got to take care of the youth. That's not a wrong statement. But it's not a priority hire in a small church. I'm going to find a high capacity young person leader that wants a chance at volunteering to grow the ministry. And if they grow the ministry to 50, I'll bring them in quarter time or halftime.
Yeah. Wow. That is a great observation. And I think what you mentioned earlier is, if you follow traditional models of this is the way I think the church should grow, then you think structure wise, I need to hire a youth. I need to hire a kids ministry. Yeah. But really what you said is you need to find somebody that the Lord has gifted that's in your church already that wants to try and see if they really have that gifting.
Yeah, you do. Now, a lot of people, Chris, will hire the worship pastor because they think if we can get the music right, we're going to get people in. Man, that music, getting it right, only satisfies people for about 90 days.
Then they're tired of it and they want somebody else, right?
Yeah, there's got to be more. There's always somebody better down the street. So here's the thing. I'm going to come back to what I had said. People aren't as concerned with going to a friendly church, but they want to make a friend at church.
Yeah.
The very first hire that I'm making is a connections pastor. Now listen, most churches don't have the connection pieces in place. Like a lot of people hear that and they're like, what are they going to do? Put greeters at the door and have somebody in the parking lot? No, that's not it. Connections is an entire overhaul of how we see church. There's a connection strategy on how are we connecting people immediately. That's a whole nother conversation. But the very first, with every church that we work with, the very first hire is going to be a connections person. And most small churches maybe can't hire full time. And so I think you can get started in 6 to 8 months and we can get a lot of connections done if we have a part-time connections person. That's the very first hire. So I'm going to do a contract worship person and I'm going to do a volunteer youth.
Oh, that's good. So insightful. So how do you know, we talked about volunteers. How do you know when a volunteer leader has grown enough to justify bringing them on as a paid staff member? It goes, budget is obvious. What was the other one?
No, it's a great, yeah. But here's the other thing. Let me read. How do you know when a volunteer leader has grown enough to justify bringing them on as a paid staff member? If you have question marks, they're not there yet. Really?
You're saying, is he ready? Is she ready?
Yeah. Here's the 2 to 3 things that I look for. I look for number one, a consistent pattern of spiritual maturity.
Okay, that's good.
Okay. Number 2, I look for, have they grown something? The church is not called to be small.
Yeah.
Okay. Now listen, what I'm not saying is there's massive purpose for some churches that are smaller, but all of us want to reach more people, right? And
Yeah.
so that may be 20 more people. That may mean 30,000 more people. But what I'm looking to see is under the influence of this volunteer, have they reached more people? Have they grown small groups as a volunteer? Have they added more volunteers as a volunteer coordinator?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at spiritual maturity. Is there a track record where you can see they've grown? Have they grown something? That's the second thing that I'm looking at. And number three, listen, I think this is big. Have they grown in emotional and social intelligence?
Hmm.
The last thing you need is somebody that's going to be in there and be a Gestapo.
Right.
Okay. And if they're growing in those three things, then I'm really going to look at potentially offering them maybe not a full-time role, but maybe we'll start and say, let's go part-time and let's test this for 6 months.
That's great. Man, so many good nuggets here. I really, I think maybe to sum it all up in my brain, it sounds like healthy church growth isn't just about copying somebody else's model. It's not about going to a conference and putting that in play, but it's about building the right structure, and it's about getting to know your people. So connecting with your people and helping them get connected with each other so that you can build the right structure for your church to grow, or your church to grow. Because if if we are the body of Christ, then it's about people knowing people. It's about walking together in discipleship, brothers sharpening brothers. It's not about staffing.
Yeah.
But staffing is important.
But it's critical. You're exactly right. It's complicated work, man, to grow God's church. There's a lot of levers.
Yeah. Well, and I think that at the end of the day, it's good to know that God loves his church more than we do. And God loves his people and wants us all to be the best version of ourselves here on earth.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm super grateful for all the thought you and the 139 team have put into this. Chris, thanks for your time today. And we are looking forward to hanging out with you again next week. And want to remind everybody that's here, we will send you a copy of the church staff guide that Chris and his team has put together. It covers all of the good but green, battle tested, rock star, unicorn, and even breaks out salary ranges for each of them. So we'll dive into more of that guide next week. Do you have any closing thought you would like to share?
This is it, man. Thank you for what you do for the kingdom. And I'm serious. What Tidely brings, man, how you fund the kingdom, how you make it easy for people to give, like dollars translates into lives change, dollars translates into entire legacies change. And so I know that what we do is big, what you guys do is big, and I just appreciate all you guys and what you do. And thanks for letting me jump on and hang out with you guys today.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. We appreciate you for being here.
All right, brother. See you next week.
All right, later.
Okay, bye-bye.